Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. Today is Saturday, September 7th, 2024, and the topic will be tips on drawing eye details. And to begin with, yesterday we did tips on drawing the eyes, and I sketched in more details, and I wanted to go over that before doing today's video. So yeah, I added, I think, I don't totally remember where I left off yesterday, but I added some of the mouth that from the videos that we did before, some stuff that I remembered there. Also, just to go over basically what I'll be sketching today is, one, is this idea that, like, right here, I didn't really like the way I set that up. I mean, sometimes, it's not bad or anything, but it's not the usual way. But sometimes you have to go in and fix a sketch if it's bothering you. And so I just use that as an excuse to do the lighting in this way so that I can cover up and adjust the sketch, since I'm doing it in ink. Now obviously you can erase it if you're doing it in pencil, but one thing about using ink that I like is it kind of makes you confront like the perfectionism and helps you to understand how to make choices, but also how to adjust that and stuff like that. It's more challenging, basically. But so in this one, I had the light come from over here, and so we'll go over that, like how it affects the eyes. And then on this one, I had the light go in the other way, even though it's kind of similar. Actually, no, it's not. So yeah, the light's hitting the far side of the face here, whereas on this one, it's hitting the near side of the face. So that's different. This one, I wanted to show kind of how to treat like the head as like a whole form, rather than having the eyes sort of look flat or something. And that'll be like the main theme for this video, is how to not make the eyes look flat. It's surprisingly easy. And then over here, I just wanted to play with one, just like a different expression. I usually do like these kind of stoic expressions. And also on this one, I had like some guidelines I had put down, and so I just incorporated it, although like that's a guideline too. So that's just something that I was, again, if you're using pencil, you can erase that. And also, just by doing that, it kind of introduced like a different lighting situation. And so sometimes you can just use like happy accidents. So yeah, I just want to go over that real quick. And so to begin with, we didn't do the profile view, so we did like a front view here, and then like a 3/4. So just to do the basic shapes of the profile view. So let's go over that, and I'll start a 5-minute timer, although that was probably 5 minutes, but that's okay. Okay. So the other principle is to sketch from imagination or memory, or out of your head, however you want to say it. That's that's the main principle, which is not to say that you can't use reference, but part of this is to train your like sketching from imagination. So if I'm just warming up, I like to put down some proportions. So for like a profile, we went over this, where if you were to draw a line and place the nose in the middle. Again, these are guidelines, so you could place it wherever, but then everything kind of adjusts accordingly, and it depends on the person or character that you're drawing. So for this example, I'll just put it in the middle here. And there's different ways of setting up the perspective line. I like to just use a straight line, or I mean the profile, and then find the shape of the brow, and it just all depends. Some brows look like that. Same with the shape of the nose. Get a little bit closer. Okay. And so you can use wherever you put the nostril here, you can use that as kind of a guide to where like the inner corner of the eye would be. And then depending on the eye like shape, then, and also like that would be like the brow. The mouth will go a little bit past where the nostril is. And so if you say that this is the chin, just figure out where the mouth is. That we've gone over this a lot. So so the corner of the mouth will be a little bit past the nostril there. And just use that as a guideline. And then as far as like how far back, like it's not going to go that much further back than, like the corner of the mouth is about halfway if you really want to use like a guideline. And again, depending on the individual face, it's like within a few millimeters of that. Same with like the shape of it. Sometimes it's this opening. It just all depends on like the shape of the lids and stuff. One thing is that it's really not as big as you think, unless you want to go for like an exaggerated style. But in any case, the shape will be similar. So let's zoom into this. Like let's say you wanted to just kind of zoom in, and then we can start to like go over the detail. Basically the lighting and the shading of it. If you were to zoom into it, just draw your proportions, find like the center there, and just look at this. And this is good training for if you're doing studies. So one thing I'm doing is like studying horses and other stuff that I don't draw that often, or that I want to draw more. Ultimately, it just comes down to proportions is what's controlling like the look. So with that said, just figure out like, if you figure that like the eyes are going to be right here, like if you take this portion right here and just put this in the center. So in this example, you put the shape of like the contour of the brow and like where the eye socket and stuff goes in, you put it behind there. You can put it in front. So that's 5 minutes, by the way. So instead of putting it behind that line, you could put it in front of it. So I started another 5-minute timer. And then from there, you can figure out like the proportion from there. So if I'll just use this line as like so again, it just depends. And then I would just look at like the space there. I mean, this is good, for example, when you're drawing portraits or anything, but especially for portraits, you have to translate or like from life, you have to translate what you're seeing onto the paper, and a lot of times it's not going to be 1-to-1 ratio, although you could set it up that way. There's a technique of portrait drawing where what you see is like you could make it 1-to-1 on the page, but I don't really do that. So anyway, that looks like that's where the eyeball would be, or the cornea. And so I can zoom in that way. So let's just go over like the details. So one is that the upper lid is like this, and the corner of the eye is behind the cornea here. So the inside corner. And then you're gonna get this kind of shape because of the eyeball, and the pupil is sitting inside there. And the reflection is coming off of the cornea. And so the iris is kind of with the pupil there, so it's an elliptical shape. And then the lashes can just be a thicker line, and obviously have different shapes to the lashes. Same with the lower lashes, can usually just be like a thicker line. And depending on the lighting, it can have some shadow. But that's the basic look. Again, a lot of this depends on the lighting, and I'll go over that because that's really what's going to keep it from looking flat, unless you just want to draw like this diagrammatic looking eye, or just going for like a very like graphic looking. And this is all different. I mean, the brow affects it. Let's just do another one for an example. You could have a more like different looking contour. So to keep it from looking flat, usually you want to think about the forms that are around the eye, because the eye is sitting within the face. It's not sitting on top of it. And so depending on the shape of the brow area, there could be a lot of shadowing, and depending on how like zoomed in you are. So those are some things to keep in mind. We've gone over the profile a lot, but that's the basics of it, and then just kind of study different people. So it's 5 minutes. Time time just flies on by. Let's do what I was saying about the shading. So let's start with a front view and draw in the eyes real quick. And like I said, if I'm just focusing on like the eyes and not a whole lot, or if I just want to start with the eyes, I'll just do kind of a basic proportion here. You can have the eyes be a little bit different because eyes are like that. The main thing is you don't want them to be crooked. That's like the thing that's gonna throw it off, because that's gonna look pretty weird. So that's why that line, just whatever guideline you use, it should still be sitting in the face correctly. Although the way you draw it, to have it be a little different is kind of good, because the eyes are not going to be exactly the same. So with that said, let's say you have light kind of over here somehow. So yeah, we went over the basic construction. So these are kind of general principles and tips that if you were to go into detail, like zoom in really close, you could translate into like a more zoomed in version, but you should still kind of keep it in mind. So for example, this tends to pick up a shadow. And so this is all about how to keep the eye from looking flat. So it's good to think about how the shadows and the forms will be. This will turn. And then again, depending on the form of the eyes, it will either pick up the light or it will pick up reflected light. The other thing is you can treat the eyes kind of as a whole unit. So for example, let's say I draw in the iris and pupil area here. Let's just kind of draw it in real quick. And this is like the basic proportion of it. By treating it as like one unit, what I mean is think of it as like one form. So we'll work on this side first before worrying about like the detail. Also, when you're drawing in the iris, what I like, so one thing is to think about like there's a lip where the bottom lid is. You want to show that there's depth, so that helps prevent the flatness. So you want to show, so a lot of times you'll do this, like don't let it meet that bottom lid because it's behind it, or this comes out further. So there's that. And also what's good is when you start to shade, if you can not have to draw something and just leave it, it helps with like the depth of the picture. You don't need to draw everything. So what I mean is, if I see that this is a good highlight, I'm not going to go in and detail that. You don't need to do that. And it makes the picture more interesting to me. That's my opinion. So that's kind of the basic look there. And then the other thing is over here, what's going on this side is that one, that's 5 minutes. One, a lot of because I'm using a pen, a lot of what I already drew is already showing like the shadow. And at this point, I can leave a lot of it like that. Let's zoom in some more. I just wanted to kind of set this up. For example, another thing could be, again, depending on the structure of this, you might get that line right there. And if it were color, it would be a pretty subtle shift. Let's zoom into this. Let's just kind of make it look bigger. So to make it look bigger, let's just do that and then draw it again real quick. All right. So now that we did that, again, I'll explain it, but also I think it's easier just to also just see what I'm doing. But if you place like the iris, basically like less is more. So if I'm gonna draw like, or if I want to indicate that there's light hitting the edge of that bottom lid, then I'm just not gonna like draw anything there. So let's place the pupil. So for example, like with this, the upper lid, it also has dimension. It's not flat on the, like there's thickness to it. So if I'm gonna draw in the lashes, again with the lashes, the same thing where I'm just gonna draw this in, and maybe I'll add a little bit of this. But if the line work, if the shadow can show you or like look like the lashes, then I want to leave that, because to me it just looks more interesting. So with that said, let's talk about, we'll stick with this lighting situation here. So one, the reflection is going to come off of the cornea. Is actually what's causing the reflection. So wherever the light is, it could have different shapes, if you want to indicate that. The pupils will be for sure black, but depending on the reflection, you'll get you can have reflections coming off of like this side. Play around with that. But one thing is, again, because we are zoomed in, like if it were like a smaller view, it's better to not go in and put in every little detail. It just looks kind of terrible to me, like when I see that. It's tempting to do that, but it's better not to. It just depends on the level of detail. Like if this is just gonna be pretty much the picture, then yeah, you wanna put a lot of detail into it. So with that said, let's get the shape looking correctly. So since we did this, it pretty much is going to dictate. So the special effects of the eye, like all the sparkly and all that, is going to come from the form and the light. So since we did this, we've basically just said, because that's coming from a light source, that's just not like randomly there. So one way to treat it, and again, it depends on the color of the iris. That's another 5 minutes. I guess it just takes a lot of time to kind of go over these things, but I'll just focus on this so that it's correct. If the light is like this, one is that everything else will go off of this, so you'll get like a shadow on that tear duct thing. Also, like with this, for example, you don't want to draw in there because the light is shining on it. So how do you get like a kind of like a wet look? You can put a little bit there, but you're wanting to show that there's that there's an edge and that there's shininess, highlights. So there's that. Also, if you're gonna draw in like the bottom lashes, think about the flatness of the eyes. If you draw everything in, it's just gonna flatten it. So you could just use line weight at first, and then if you want to add a little bit, you can, but use it sparingly. And the reasoning is because you want to show that there's a lot of light just like bouncing around, and that's how you get like the nice special effects. It's not from drawing every detail. So again, because the light is coming from somewhere over here, just begin by using different line weight and pulling the form out from the surface, the paper. Also, if you're working on both eyes here, don't just focus on the one. Think about what's going on this side. So even if the lighting is pretty similar, it won't be like exact, but I mean it could be kind of, depending on the light. The more exact it looks, the more artificial the light starts to be. You might want to start to put the brow in there. Again, don't put the brow dead center, otherwise, again, you flatten the drawing. It grows kind of like this, and then downwards to that point there. Next, so I like to leave open spaces if I'm gonna do like a kind of a detailed eye, because there is reflected light, and so if I can leave that, then I will. So if it's looking like, yeah, that's pretty cool, like there's light reflecting under there, that's good, I would leave that. Also, to indicate like the moisture and stuff, like it's not gonna meet right under there. So if the light's coming from here, I might indicate like a little bit here, but I want to leave these open spaces for like the moisture. If you want it to look like glossy, you don't always want it to look this way. There's also you can shade more of it. I mean, there's a lot of detail to the eye. So now that we got this far, depending on the form, you might get like a fold right here. So that'll pick up some light. And then same with this, will be in shadow. So yeah, if you can make it look okay with just line thickness, then do that. It looks more interesting. again, in my opinion. Also with this shape, you'll get some of this going on. You might get some of that. I'll start another 5-minute timer. And that's really what it comes down to. Less is more. You'll get like maybe a little bit of this going on. And from here, if you looked up like reference of eyes, you'll see that a lot of it has already been drawn and you don't have to do a ton. Again, like even with like the iris, you could put a thicker line on the edges, but like do it kind of sparingly. If you want to darken it up a little bit, basically because of the shape, because see here, like we said, that the iris is kind of going in, then it's kind of like a dish. So, and then there's a lot of different designs. We'll keep it simple for now. You could do that. And so you'll notice that a lot of the glossiness and special effects and stuff is coming from leaving out a lot of the drawing and just putting in the essential. And notice that you can actually leave this kind of, I mean, if you want to shade it a little bit, you can, but there is reflected light going under that lid. And that's to keep it from looking flat. You might get like some of the lower lid. But again, remember that like, the more stuff you put into it, like the flatter it starts to look. So yeah, that's just some examples. If you wanted to make it look like these eyes, I mean, you can, like the song, just thought of that. You can add some of the same shading. So get this kind of. So my thing is how to draw from your imagination and have it look interesting and have it look the style that you want. I like to do this and then I'll do some sketches from reference or from life or wherever, and then just practice like memory, and I call it creative drawing or drawing from imagination. That's definitely the focus on my work and on this channel. So you can see that it takes a little while you can't hurry it, especially if you're going to do it detailed. But you can do this kind of less detailed eye if you're working on like the whole face. That's gonna be the main thing for today. Let's zoom out here. And I worked on some more so maybe we'll go over that, like you can see, it's just a different approach. Like with this one, like same lighting situation, but with different eye shapes. Here's a different like treatment using less cross hatching. So that's 5 minutes, and I'll start to wrap up this video. I'll just let you see some of my experiments here. Again, just different treatments and just different shapes. But hopefully that helped you out, and thanks for joining me today and supporting the channel. I appreciate it, and until next time, keep on sketching.